Hello, this is Dan Whitman with Vicky Taylor today. It's November 6th, 2025, in our course on international crisis management. Now, up until now, we've been looking at crisis from the point of view of conflict, regional tensions, one country hostile to another. We're in a completely different mode now, very much relevant to crisis. And, we've been doing this course for a few years. This is the first time we've had a real session on dealing with a crisis in a community. I think it's not required that the community be in trauma, right, Vicky? But there can be tensions, there can be generational divides. Your work is really fascinating, and you work in Prince Williams County, which is in Northern Virginia. Virginia had a big day on Tuesday and Wednesday. Some of us are um, um, pleased with what happened. I'll just say that. She's nodding. Um, Vicky, oh, and before I forget, let's see, coming up, some things of the future. The Monday schedule has to be redone. I'll announce this probably on Sunday. We'll have the speaker we had needed to change the dates. Next Thursday, we have Michael Clark, who is a leading academician slash a military expert at King's College London. King's College London is a really remarkable place. It is the home of Sir Lawrence Freedman and others who've been looking at grand strategy and uh, military strategy. So we'll be back to that sort of geopolitical mode next Thursday. But today we get to talk about communities. Vicky, let's see, today is UN International Day for Preventing. Thank you, Tatiana Mikolajchuk. UN International Day for Preventing the Exploitation of Women. Great. Um, the UN, we've been looking at times when the UN does not do very well at applying chapters 6 and 7 of its own charter. No fault of its own. It has to do with sovereignty. But thank you. And Vicky, give us, I won't call it a microcosm, but it's a whole different sense of what a crisis is on a community level. Can you get us started?
Yes, good morning. Good morning on my end. I know some of you are evening, night, but welcome, my friends. I am so glad to be here with you. I have spent the last, almost 40 years really immersed in how to help communities recover after a disaster or after an event that shakes them, but also working with my primary job now is working with our public safety personnel. So working with our police officers, our firefighters, and people who work in corrections. So my work sort of spans across the people who are first responders, and then what happens in the community, and how can we best, as providers in the middle of it, right, help a community that's in crisis. And as Dan said, crisis can be a very large scale event, or it can be something that impacts one family, but the families around them are traumatized as well. So I was so struck when I first met Dan. He led me to the book, Terrorism, Betrayal, and Resilience, which is a wonderful book by Prudence Bushnell. And she had the best quote in there, and it's what I wanted to start with. And I don't know if you want me to share my screen, Dan.
I will be glad to do that. I will have to give you permission, which of course I'll do. You are now a co-host, Vicky Taylor. Um, and I have your other documents on my screen if you want me to share them at any point. Prudence Bushnell, yes, we see your screen now. This is great. Um,
So here,
oh, wow, the cosmos. Oh my.
right?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. I want everybody to know, by the way, the document that you're seeing, The Power of Five, is on your Google Classroom. If you look alphabetically under T for Taylor, you'll find the 4 documents that Vicky wants to share with us. So these documents are all available to you. You want to open that, Vicky?
I now cannot get my screen back up so that I can
Oh,
even see.
try unsharing and sharing again. And if you have any issues, I have this on my screen also. Now share again and see what happens. And
Let's
I
see.
can put this up pretty quickly if you want.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
so this would be The Power of Five, that one.
yes,
Uh, this one. You see the 4 that I have here, right? Um, okay, there we go. You see it now?
I do.
So you tell me when to advance and I'll advance the slides.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I just want to say one little thing about the power of five. These are 5 actions you can take. That the reason why I truly love this framework that I'm going to share with you is you can use it for self-care when you're in the middle of a crisis or when you're the provider helping those in crisis. You can use it for support of one another on a team of people who are working together. You can help family members learn how to use these 5 um, really spectacular uh, factors to help one another. And it's a wonderful guide for leadership. If you're a leader and you're trying to figure out what do we do, we're in the middle of a crisis, where should we begin? This is a very nice template. So that's what I'm going to share with you, sort of a 10,000-foot view, and I'm more than happy to share more with you if you want to contact me after. So go
Mhm.
ahead, Dan, and we'll just take a look at
Okay.
um, this book that I
Yeah.
just was so
Sorry,
touched by.
I need to interrupt to ask people once again to please mute yourself. Those who are not muted are disturbing the discussion. Uh, okay,
So
go ahead.
the thing that Prudence, I thought she's amazing, was the ambassador when the Nairobi, Kenya embassy was bombed. And she said this, take care of your people and the rest will take care of itself. And I just found that to be so poignant and so to the point of what it is that I want to share with you. So go ahead, Dan. We'll go to the next one just to talk quickly about what is hard about crisis work. So you have a community in crisis and you're trying to figure out what can I do that will make a difference. Because these are high intensity and low frequency events, hopefully they don't happen every day, um, people get a heightened sense of responsibility and we work many, many long hours. I know that many of you are very aware of this and maybe even doing it right now. We begin to think as staff who are trying to figure out how to help our community that our own needs don't even come close to what other people are suffering. So we don't tend to take such good care of ourselves, which means that a lot of our work then we set aside the normal things we do to take care of ourselves, and that creates sometimes tension on the home front. It's easy to get overly involved with people, and I don't need to tell you this because this probably happens every day in every crisis. There's all kinds of intra-agency and interpersonal conflicts that can show up. So what do we do? Go ahead, Dan. Longitudinally, when we think the long view about crisis stress. Well, the thing is, when we're in the middle of it, most of us that are helpers don't recognize that we also are stressed until much later, perhaps after the dust settles. So those effects are sometimes just masked by adrenaline because we are working 20 hours a day. And sometimes we don't realize we have a problem until we develop our own medical problem. Our body says enough already, right? And we become totally stressed out, or we take time off. And then we go, wow, I didn't realize I was so stressed out until I took time off. Wow. And leaders, when we're in a leadership position, we often don't receive feedback from people because people are understandably wanting to help. And so when we want to help, we're willing to go the extra mile. And so often leaders don't know that we have problems until much, much later. Go ahead, Dan. So here's what happens, right? Is we have the chance to develop a stress injury. So these four things, I would say to you, carry these with you and think about them. Because thank goodness, right? There's only four ways to get a stress injury, but they're pretty big ones, aren't they? Life threat, so a trauma, being in a war-torn area, being anywhere where you are exposed to traumatic injury, the death of others, people losing everything that they have, that is a traumatic injury. And we can, and as providers, we can get those. We could also get a grief injury, right? And grief injuries obviously are when someone we love dies, but they're also the loss of cherished things like the belief in our safety. We perhaps lose a piece of ourselves in the midst of this. We perhaps lose the cohesion of our work team. Those are also losses that can come when a community is in crisis. Moral injury, we learned about this mainly from our returning soldiers, but we have come to look at this so closely, and I see it every day in my work with our police and firefighters. Moral injuries are either engaging in behaviors or witnessing behaviors that violate your own moral values. This is an injury of our belief system, and they can go very deep, and they can cut really strongly. And so if we are observing people doing things that we know are wrong, if we are caught in one of those situations where you have to make a decision and neither of them is a great one, and you know that whatever decision you make, some people will fare well and some won't, that can cause a moral injury. These are the times when we say, I should have, I could have, if only I would have, it must be my fault. I wish I had done something different. And then wear and tear injuries. We used to call this burnout, right? It's a fatigue injury. And it just is the accumulation of stress from everywhere. So imagine you're in a community in crisis, but you also have your own life going on and your own struggles with your own family, perhaps your own job, trying to manage, trying to help your community. So we are at great risk for having stress injury. So what do we do? And that's the gist of what I want to talk to you about is when your community is in crisis, what do you do to take care of yourselves, to take care of community members, and to chart a path? And so go ahead, Dan. I want to share with you a framework that in the US we call stress first aid. And it was first created actually by the Marine Corps and Navy. And they created it in order to create a buddy care system among soldiers. But since then, this evidence-informed framework, which I told you before, is great for self-care, for supporting each other, for leadership. Um, it has been now translated a million times, adapted for, you can see a whole list of people. So we use it extensively with fire and medical personnel, with rail workers, with our wildland firefighters, with law enforcement, court officers, and obviously, germane to our work, our talk today, disaster or crisis response. healthcare workers, chaplains. But the other thing I really want to emphasize is that this same framework, it's why I love it. You can use it for yourself, but you can use, this is the same framework that guides you to provide assistance to a community or to individuals that are in crisis. And so I told you that it's evidence informed, and I sent this, go ahead, Dan, and I sent this article for you to see. This is the original article that began the whole thoughts about stress first aid. And that was just looking at this set of things, and two of them disappeared, but I'll tell you what they are, and you'll see them in another slide. There are 5 things that trauma experts boiled down from all the research that they could look at over about 20 years. It said, what would be the things that are the most important for us to focus on when a community or a person is struggling through adversity? And here they are. The first one is safety, obviously, right? And I know safety is a relative term. If you're in the middle of a war zone, safety is very different than what we can do if we can totally remove someone from danger. Calming, helping people get emotional regulation and calm down their emotions that keep them from thinking clearly. Self-efficacy is just the belief that, you know what, there are resources that I can use to get through this, and I can make my way through this. And it also has a piece of it that goes along with one of the other ones where the text disappeared, and that is hope. And hope is really believing that there are others who are benevolent enough to help you, and that we will reach out to help one another. It helps us reconnect to our mission. It helps us remember what we came out here to do in the first place when we're surrounded by a crisis in a community. And the last one is connection. And I think this is the glue that holds it all together, honestly, is that human connection. We are wired for connection as human beings. So that connection of how is it that we help one another? We reach out bigger than just for ourselves and our own family, but for our own community. And how is it that we use those 5 things then to enhance our connection to one another? So go ahead, Dan. If you take those 5 things
Oh,
that,
look, they're coming up.
oh, here they
Ah,
are.
there we go. They magically appeared. Okay.
Okay,
Um,
so go to the next one. So if
okay.
we take those 5 things, safety, calming, connectedness, self-efficacy, and hope, and we just put them into the words of this framework, stress first aid, then safety becomes cover, finding cover for people. How is it that we help people feel covered? Calm is the same, connect. Self-efficacy, or the belief that you can be personally effective, is competence. So how do we restore competence in people and in communities? And then hope becomes confidence, confidence in the future, confidence that the future can be brighter, that things can improve, confidence in our mission, remembering what we came for in the first place. So those are how those 5 things that came from research got placed into this framework. And then the next slide, you'll see I have made just an easy little graphic for us, and I sent it to Dan so you can have it. This is for people that work in our emergency management, that do disaster response, any of our public safety personnel that are responding every day in our community to people's crises. So here they all are on a little card, and then 2 wraparound constant actions that we also do called check and coordinate. So let's just take a
Mhm.
spin through each of these one at a time, and we're going to
Okay.
do a very high level look at what does it mean,
Mhm.
what might you do, and then we'll tie it up so we can have
Okay.
a discussion. So
Great.
go
Let
ahead,
let
Dan.
me add that I have added this slide to your book. You have it in 2 forms, everybody. You have it on Google Classroom. You also have it on the announcement that I put up yesterday for today's meeting. I think Vicky suggests this is a pretty mobile, quick way of remembering the basics. And this is something you can print.
Yeah.
You can print out and have with you just as in a moment of stress, usually your brain isn't quite engaged. And this is a way of just, it's like a mnemonic device. It's a way of remembering. I believe, Vicky, the people you work with walk around with these things in their pockets, I think. Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So
Yeah.
next one.
They
Um,
use these, and I will tell you that our police and our firefighters, we use it to help them when they are traumatized by what they've seen, but they use it to help the community when they're responding. And
uh-huh.
so we are trying to help them. How is it that you do everything, every response that you do? How do you keep in mind these 5 things? So start with cover, that's safety, right? It's the safety piece. It's not just physical, it's also psychological. And what does that mean? It's safe for me to take a risk. I can speak up. I'm in a safe place. Other people care about me. I'm surrounded by people that care about me and are willing to help. So these are times when we might just be standing by. It's not that we need to rush in, it's that we're there as a comforting presence. It may be that we have to make a person safe, right? We have to pull them to safety because they're so traumatized by whatever is going on. They're putting themselves or their family members at risk. So maybe we're making them safe or others safe. And the last one I think is the most important, and that's encouraging a perception of safety, of being able to have people think in the moment when they are in a crisis, in the middle of it, still scared. Hey, listen, I'm here. You're safe now. Or we're going to help you. We're going to be side by side and we'll help you through this. So, encouraging people to believe that there is safety. All right. And then calming. Calming's just emotional regulation. You know, we are all tempted, I guess, when people are agitated to say, calm down, why don't you? But it never works, does it? Um,
Yeah.
Calming is this is a really big skill, and it's about learning to reduce your own agitation so that you can think clearly. So we can get back to our, prefrontal cortex out of our survival brain, our limbic system, and think, okay, what do I need to do here? And so the first thing to do is what? Quiet your physical agitation. Take a minute, take a breath, slow down, slow your heart rate down, slow your respirations down. Just take a pause so that you can quiet your physical agitation or the agitation of others. You know, often with others that are agitated when a community is in crisis, um, you may just walk with somebody quietly. You don't need to say anything. And then what? Give people a chance to compose themselves, to pull themselves back together. Fostering rest is something that we very much overlook, and how incredibly important it is in times of high stress and adversity to foster rest, not only by impacted people, but for those of us who are coming in to help. Foster rest for you, for your team. I was fortunate to work in our country after the attacks on the World Trade Center in New York and help firefighters there. And one of the most important things that we did was we limited the time that we were exposed. We said, you know what, here's your 12-hour shift, go out and work, and then you need to rest. So you'll be ready to go out on your next shift. And then soothing. Sometimes people just need a calm, nice voice that says, you know what, we're going to find a way. We never promise people it's going to be okay because often things are never going to be the same way they were, and it's not really going to be okay. It will be different, and we will get through it, but things will be different. But soothing people and reminding them, you know what, we're going to be here for you, and being there for, if you're a leader, to be there for your people. And that leads us to the next one, which is connect, right? Who's got your back? Do you feel like you are working with or surrounded by people who care about you? How, when you're working in a community that may be fractured by some kind of adversity, horrible event, how is it that we help people begin to pull back together? So much of it is just being with people. One of the biggest lessons I have learned in all of the disasters I've been to is often we are just with and we observe and we ask people, what is it that you need the most? If you know what your most urgent need is, I will try to help you get it. And often people know what they need. And I can tell you, having done this work, often I would have never guessed what they had told me. But once we get them what they wanted, it helps us with the sense of agency, doesn't it? Like, oh, I can get back in control now. So we're trying to promote connection in every way we can. How do we help people reconnect in a community where things are devastated? Are there central meeting areas? Are there still some of the institutions that pull people together? Houses of worship, those kinds of things where we can promote that connection. And then, of course, we are working really hard to reduce people's sense of isolation. And also, if you're one of the workers, to reduce your own sense of isolation, because this can be tough work and lonely work. And that leads us to competence, which is that piece about self-efficacy, right? Your belief that you can succeed and persevere. And not only, it's sort of in three areas I like to think of it, that we can persevere in our job, we can keep going occupationally, even under adversity, we can keep going interpersonally, and we can maintain our effectiveness in taking care of ourselves. And that's a big order, isn't it? Doing it for your job, for your relationships, and for yourself. So this action is really designed to help us foster and improve our social skills. Because I don't know about you, but when I'm stressed, sometimes I'm grumpy. And so, how is it that we help people, not be biting each other's face off? And how is it that we help ourselves take a moment and remember that our strength is because we're in this together? What about work-related skills? Sometimes when we're under enormous stress from adversity or a community adverse event, we forget basic skills that we knew. We go to work and we can't remember how to do something. You say, I've done this 100 times. So how do we help people restore that sense of competency in their work-related skills? And what about self-care? This one goes out the window often. If you are a worker in a disaster and you are going out to try to make it better for the people impacted, remember we started at the beginning. We are people who put our own needs aside. This action tells us, no, no, we need to stop and we need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves. And I think Prudence did such a great job in her book talking about this is just basic stuff. Make sure you stop to eat. Make sure you're drinking enough water. Make sure that you're, checking in with your family, getting enough rest, the things that we hear all the time and we don't always do when we're in a crisis situation. And helping our community, helping people do that as well. And last but not least, I think is the overarching one, right? This is about confidence. It's about hope. Confidence is about hope. So if you are responding, if you're going as a responder to a community in a crisis, this is about remembering your mission. When we are looking at the mass of destruction that we often are, sometimes it's hard to remember what was my mission here in the first place? What am I setting out to do? But always keeping that North Star where you can see it and remind you. And what about trust in your organization? What about trust in the leadership of your organization? Trust in each other. This is a very big action here where we talk about rebuilding and rebuilding trust. trust in the mission. Maybe it's trust in your organization. Maybe you feel betrayed. Maybe you feel like your leadership betrayed you, or somebody betrayed you, and now here we are in the middle of a terrible event that we're trying to work our way through. But also, hope is about having a sense of possibility for the future, that it's not always going to be this bleak, that we can work our way through it and that we can grow and learn. And that's the piece about post-traumatic growth that I'm sure you've heard of, and finding meaning in challenging situations. How is it that we stand back and find meaning and help people rebuild their sense of self-worth and community worth, and think about what are the things that the community values the most, and how is it that we can help begin to replace those or continue to get those things up and running. And that leads us to the last two, those two that were in the center of my graphic. And that's the two continuous actions. And that's constantly checking. Check on yourself. Ask yourself, how am I doing? Right? Be honest. Be situationally aware. How's it going out there? Are we making progress? Know the people that you work with, because the people that you work with closely, particularly when we're working in tragedy, are the ones that will notice first that, oh, I think you might need a break now. I can tell you that for many of us, we just keep going on, and people say, no, no, I think you need a break because I can see that you're starting to fray around the edges there, Vicky. So know your people. And then coordinate. Coordinate is just knowing what's out there. What resources are there? What resources can I draw on? How do I manage those resources so I get the most I get the most out of the resource for the most amount of people? And that's always an issue when we have a community that is struggling in adversity, is how do we get that resource, and then how do we make sure we get it around to as many as we can? And why does all of this matter? Well, I think because support often comes when we have a minute to self-reflect, and we have a minute just to look in the mirror and say, how am I doing? Do I feel safe? Do I feel like I'm surrounded by people that care about me, that connection? How am I doing at keeping my own emotions in check so that I can help others whose emotions are agitated because of what they've been through? How can I return effectiveness to my work for taking care of myself, for taking care of my relationships, for my job, so that I can build hope? But it also comes in understandings between people who work together in very tough situations. And sometimes it's that moment where you are in the middle of something gut-wrenchingly tragic and sad, and a person you work with just gives you a look, a, a little hand on a shoulder, a hug, says two words, or says, you know what, we've got this. A little bit of a, hey, listen, we're going to keep forging forward. Sometimes, and we can't replace those minutes later. I'm a therapist by trade. Can I do that in my office later? Sure. But it doesn't have the same power as when it happens right there in the moment. And that always fosters connection, because it's really sometimes only in the moment that we can deliver the right support. And so that's why I say, keep these 5 things close to you. And remember, wow, can I help this person or this community feel a bit more safe? What can I do to calm myself and help others begin to calm so they can think about what they need to do next? How can I do everything I can to really foster connection? Because connection is what helps us get through adversity. It's very difficult to struggle by yourself. And then how can I take these 5 things and help people build their competence? Like, you know what? I believe that you can make it through this, and I'm going to lend you a little bit of my belief in you and help you make that path to get through it because that provides hope. And hope is the thing that we need to keep us moving forward for the future. So, in the end, what's the value added? The value added is that really we are creating, you might have to click it again, Dan. This one might be
Ah, yeah.
comes in.
Okay.
Yeah. We're creating, when you do these 5 things, we know from research, you are setting yourself, but more importantly, the people in your community and your community on a trajectory towards recovery, whatever that looks like. But we're setting them on the right path rather than having people say, oh my gosh, I had the worst day of my life. And then the people that came to help me made it worse. If we think of these 5 things, right, we can put them on a trajectory that will help them recover. It creates really strong support among employees or people working together and enormous community support. And you know what? It also, if you're one of the people doing this, it makes you feel good about the job you do and the difference you make because you can go away knowing these things are grounded in really strong research that's lasted over 20 years. And so the last thing I leave you with is what people remember most, right? Is that we treat them as if they matter. And hopefully these 5 little actions also connected to those 2 continuous ones when we're constantly checking. We're checking back in. We're seeing how's it going? Did what we decide to do work? And then saying, oh, we need a new resource. What about that resource? How do we do that so that we can make it all come together and have people feel like they matter? So that was a lot of talking to get through for
Um,
5 simple things.
yeah. Vicky, for emphasis, should I go back to the slide of the there we are.
Sure, there we are.
Um, Here for emphasis, everybody. And again, I've posted this as a separate link or icon. Uh, it seems so simple, but Vicky says that if you have this in your pocket or what have you, that this can trigger some connections to the knowledge that we've just gained. Vicky, this is remarkable, remarkable. I would say everyone on this call, no exception, has needed this expertise. And almost everybody, I think, has an innate talent. So that what you're telling us, in a sense, it's things that we already know, but in
Yes.
moments of panic, we tend to forget what we know. I see applause already rising up the screen. I hope you're seeing that, Vicky. Um, this is I encourage people. I think this is enormously relevant, certainly, obviously, for all Ukrainians. Kenyans are going through
Yes.
some Kenyans are going through some
Yes.
challenges. I think remarkably successfully. I greatly admire what young Kenyans have been able to do, and they need this methodology. Um, Questions are welcome. I have 3 or 4. One of them is, Vicky Taylor, when did you understand that you have an innate talent to do this work? It comes naturally to some and not to others. When did you realize that you are really cut out for being helpful in situations of community trauma?
It was like most good things, I think, it came by accident in my life. I,
Yeah.
I was a person that had a fatigue injury, by the way. So we all have stress injuries. So don't beat
Ah,
yourself up, right? We all
okay.
get them. I had a fatigue injury in my job as a counselor. And I thought, oh my goodness, why did I ever sign up to do this? I'm not making a
Ugh.
difference for anybody. And somebody put out a memo and said, does anybody want to learn how to work with disaster? and
Ah,
particularly with the people that respond to disasters, disaster workers, firefighters, police. And I said, oh, I want to learn to do that. That sounds so interesting. And
um,
I was just so stricken by doing it. And I had wonderful, wonderful mentors
mhm,
who taught me along the way, show up and shut
mhm.
up, listen,
When you
observe.
say fatigue and injury, do you mean that you were providing therapy individually and that you were burnt out doing that? Is that what you
Yes,
mean?
yes,
Yeah. Um, okay, so prior to having this expertise, you had um, a different type of expertise prior to that, dealing with individuals, maybe not during moments of crisis, but assisting them when they had a moment or 50 minutes or whatever on a schedule. That's quite different from being
yes.
in the middle of a crisis, right? So the one, in your case, the one led naturally to the other. Do you think that could be the case with other people too? Is that a pattern that you think might be a common pattern in people who get to this advanced stage of being in the middle of a crisis? Or does it come from all directions?
I think it can come from many directions, right?
Yeah.
Because if you can take those, and I wish, I mean, I look back at many of the things that I did early on in my career, and we were using some of this framework without even knowing it. But I just think about, wow, if I had known these things, right? Just stop at the beginning and ask yourself, do people feel safe? If people don't feel safe, we're never going to get to the next place, right? So we have
Hmm.
to
Yeah.
at least create a perception of safety, and be able. And I tell you, my greatest teachers have been the people themselves who have been in the midst
Ah,
and middle of crisis, who have
uh-huh.
been willing to speak with me and share with me their trauma and their journey of how they managed to begin to put the pieces back together.
Hmm. I've just written that in my notes. This is a key concept. The people you're trying to help can be the ones who give you the best advice or
Amen.
the best data, the best recognition of what the situation is. Again, I invite anybody to come along. Again, I would observe everything you've just shown us. I think most of us said, right, check, yes, of course, got it, yes. I mean, when it's presented to you, it seems obvious. However, when you're asked to actually be the caregiver, this flies out of your brain, right? And until you've become practiced as you have over some decades, I suppose this is a skill that doesn't come um, in one flash, but comes through the benefit of being experienced in many different circumstances, I guess. Now, um, if others are welcome, I would ask you, you've given us some wonderful principles to go by. Does an example come to mind, Vicky, of an instance where you had to draw on these principles and where you were able to do so? Could you walk us through a sample? I know I should have prepared you for this. I don't know if
That's
you can.
okay.
Um, can you think of an instance where um, you had to draw on these principles um, because of a certain incident? If you can give it to us in practical terms so that we can understand what was the situation and how did you interact and what degree of success did you have? Total success usually is not available to us, right? Yeah.
Correct.
So you have many experiences. Can you think of one or two where you can tell us, then I did this and then I did that? Can you do that? Um,
Um, yeah, I have a couple of things. I'll tell you a funny one.
Good. Let's start
Um,
with that.
right?
Okay.
Because it wasn't what I expected. So this was after a major hurricane, Hurricane Andrew, actually, that was a Category 5 that hit Miami. And I was there working as part of a team for, believe it or not, the Burger King Corporation, who
Okay.
wanted to help their employees. And they had a resource fair. Remember, one of those things in the middle was coordinate. Well, they said, we're going to set up resources. So all these people who had lost their homes, lost their community, lost their place to work, were all gathering, trying to get help. And so I was there working and helping people. And there was one young woman who was crying. And she cried for most of the day, honestly. Every time I came back, she was in the same seat. Somebody different was talking to her and she was crying. And we were getting close to the end of the day, and somebody said to me, listen, we need to wrap up. So can you go talk to her? And I thought to myself in a panic, what am I going to do? Everybody's been talking to her all day and she's still sitting there in the same place. So I went over, I took some water. I said, yep, have you had anything to drink for a while? I said, you mind if I sit down with you? We had, so we drank some water and I said, do you know what you need the most right now?
Mhm, mhm.
And literally she changed when I asked her. She dried up a tear, she pulled away a tear, she sat up straight and she looked at me and she said, I know exactly what I need. And I said, oh, well, if you tell me what it is, I'm going to do everything I can to help you get it. So what is it that you need? And she said, I was in my apartment. The side of my building was ripped off. I was behind my washing machine trying to save my life. And she said, and so I have nowhere to go, and I'm having to live with my sister.
Ah.
And I'm thinking, well, that's a wonderful thing, right? You're living with your sister. And she said, my sister and I hate one another. This is the reality of our lives, isn't it? And she said, we hate one another. And she said, and you know what the worst thing is? I'm wearing her underwear.
Okay.
You know how humiliating it is to have to borrow underwear from your sister that you don't even like?
Wow.
And I said to her, you're in the wrong tent. Oh my goodness, you need somewhere to live and you need to go shopping. See the blue tent down there, they will help you find a temporary residence. See the yellow tent? That's where you can go and get a voucher to go to get some clothing and some basics that you need. And I tell you, at that moment, going back to all of these things I learned, what did I want to do? I wanted to take her by the hand and say, come on, I'll walk you down there. But I knew, see, we're trying to build competence, right? I was looking at her and thought, she can do this by herself. She's got spirit. And so I said, I want you to walk down there and I'll be here when you're finished because I'd like to see what you put together for yourself. And off she went, and 20 minutes later, she came back smiling, said, I've got a voucher. I found a place to live. And I said, could I ask you a really stupid question? And she said, sure. And I said, what have you been talking about all day? And she said, well, everybody that sat down to talk to me wanted to know um, how I survived and how scary that must have been. And we just kept talking over and over again about how frightening it was to have the side of your apartment building ripped off. And so she was caught in that loop, right? Instead of the loop of, oh, let's see if we can move her. That wasn't
Mhm,
helping her
mhm.
feel safe. It's like, well, you're safe now, so let's do that. So I always laugh because I never would have guessed that that's
So,
what was going on, right?
I
So it
think
always pays to ask somebody.
you've made this point very emphatically that um, don't look to the experts, look to the people who need the help because they may not easily be able to articulate what they need, but they can with a little bit of coaching. We have some remarkable chats entered here, Vicky. Some of them are too bashful to actually unmute. Olga Jean-Baptiste is a person of Haitian background. She lives in New York and she assisted survivors of 9/11.
Yes.
And if you see the chat here, she says she's retired after 30 years of doing the type of work that you're doing. She worked at Rikers Island, substance abusers, intellectually disabled, and she adds a very touching comment. I became depressed and I had to retire from nursing. Um, what would you say to Olga Jean-Baptiste? She's a remarkable person who's been through everything. She's been through everything.
Everything. Yes.
Yeah. Would you say you once in part of your presentation, you said, don't promise them perfection, promise them what's actually possible. If you have any comments for Olga, we would all appreciate, and I would add that some of the other comments come from Cameroonians and Kenyans. I mean, these are universal situations and needs. Maybe 30 years is enough, Olga. What do you think? Uh, uh,
Um,
uh,
no, well, I'm only 52, but my advocacy has caused me to get fired. I've had entire staff in a building completely angry with me because of the horrendous stuff that they do to the one patient at Rikers. She
Yep.
faked a seizure, and then we attend a medical emergency. And the not the doc, she's a PA, physician assistant. She knew she was faking. She took an entire box of um, the smelling salt, ammonia, and she put it in her hand and put it in her face. And
okay,
immediately I said, "You don't do that in front of me, and I will report it if you ever do that again." Everybody was upset with me.
yeah.
Oh,
Um,
but Olga, you know what? That's the perfect example of a moral injury, witnessing something that goes totally against your values and what you know is right. And the thing that I just love about you, looking at all of the people that you have served and telling that story, is that you are fearless. You were not afraid to stand up. The thing you left with is your own personal integrity intact, right? Because you can leave saying, I could have walked away and turned my head the other way and just said quietly, I don't agree with that, or, but you didn't. You took a stand, and you took a stand for a person who couldn't stand up for themselves. And I would suspect, looking at all of the people that you've served over I mean, all of my years in community mental health, those were the same populations that I served, and it is taxing. And the gifts that you brought there, I wonder if you are even fully aware that for that person that day in Rikers, to have you say that and they witness that, you might have been one of the first people in their life, if not the only person who they respect, who actually stood up for them. I mean, we know, right? Our prisons, our mental health institutions, they're full of people who have not had an advocate. And for that person, wow, the gift you gave them that day is enormous. Now, it came at enormous personal um, expense for you, but I think the reward in that, because I always look for, okay, there's lots of challenges, and boy, there's a million in what you talked about, but the reward is you made a difference in that person's life that day. And you know what? You made a difference in everybody that they might have done the same thing, but they knew they were wrong because
mhm.
you had the courage to point it out to them. That is huge. You have such courage.
Vicky, that's a very touching comment. I think we have all just witnessed an instance of crisis management between two individuals. What a remarkable short dialogue. Thank you both. We will
Oh,
get.
thank you, Olga. My gosh.
Yes, we thank you, Olga, all of us. Margarita, we'll get to you in a moment. Let's just look at Matthias Centra is a colleague of mine in Cameroon. He's very remarkable. I think you can see the chat, yes?
Yes.
So it's very true that caregivers often to take care of themselves. He adds, in a crisis situation, it may be challenging to provide victims some hope. What are your recommendations for finding the right moment or words? I think we've just seen that actually, but is there anything, can you convert your instinctively wonderful, kind words that you've just given us into principles that we might remember? What did you just do with Olga?
You know, I think what one has to do in those times is listen for it. What one firefighter told me is you've got to find the win. And I used to say to him, "Oh my God, in this awful circumstance, how do you find a win?" And he said, "I practice it every day."
Wow.
And so how do you find and it may be some tiny little kernel in a huge crisis situation that helps people have hope. And sometimes hope, and I think it felt like it just now with Olga and I think that sometimes it comes because there's a connection, because another person listens to you and sees who you really are in that moment, and then is willing to. I find the biggest thing that happens, and I have to guard against it, and I train the people that work with me. When people are saying there's no hope, I'm not going to be able to get through this, I can't do it, or I think I really made a big mistake and I can't forgive myself, we tend to rush in and cheerlead, because we don't want people to feel bad. So we say, "Oh, no, no, it's going to be okay." Or we say, "No, you didn't make a mistake." Or even sometimes when people did make mistakes, we say, "You didn't, I would have done the same thing." Instead of just saying, "Tell me more about it." And tell me, because it is true, when you look around in a community that's devastated and everything seems lost, those are the times to have those conversations and to say, with everything that's lost, what do we still have that's of value here? Well, we have one another,
Mm-hmm.
and we can build from that, right? That's connection.
Yes.
And how do we find hope? Like, what is it? Where do we want to go from here? Everything is lost, then that means, you know what? We have the opportunity to build it. So
Mm-hmm.
what are we going to build going forward?
Um,
These are tough conversations, and they don't make anything magic, that's for sure.
yeah. Maharita, thanks for your patience. Would you like to unmute now? Maharita
Yeah,
Chakova?
sure.
Uh,
First, thank you for the lecture. And I have a question. Um, what can we do if society is stuck in a crisis? When people are used to danger, to stress, and people have already gone through stages of hope, of humor, of the support.
Yep.
But the problem is still here and it's just frozen. It's everything is uncertain. We don't know what's going to be
Yep.
when people are calm, but only like outside, but inside of them there is still fear. And
Yes.
uh, how can we manage it? Because people are just tired of
um,
everything.
uh,
Yeah.
Yes.
Vicky, I think you understand that this is an articulate and brilliant summary from the point of view of a Ukrainian, and we all know what Ukrainians are
Ukrainian.
going
Yep.
through every day. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and you just gave the best example of when you think about safety. The safety is relative, isn't it? Because for many people right now in Ukraine, there is no sense of safety. It's all unknown, what's going to happen, and that uncertainty, right? So I think when you're in the middle of something that is so ongoing and has been going on for so long, I think the thing that's left for us when I look at those five things is, how do we continue to use the glue that holds us together? How is it that we find the ways to make connection? Because it's in connection that we find those little moments of feeling just a tiny bit safer, right? Because we're not alone. Like, somebody else is doing this with me. Um, and so, and when you're in the situation that you're in, I can't even imagine it. To think about how is it that we would get people to to do the thing that is that will be the most helpful, and that is, how is it that you get them to still connect with one another? Because holy mackerel, your country and the people, the little piece I see from my end, right, on our news and what I listen to, I'm like, oh my God, this is the picture of resilience and a perseverance and a belief in a mission and a belief in what's important. And so how is it that you help people band together and take that makes you so strong and see it yourselves when you're so beleaguered by what's going on around you? Because for many of us, I will tell you, it is truly inspirational. And I'm sure it doesn't feel like it being in the middle of it. So I think the thing that's left there is connection. And then that connection to restoring people's sense of, you know what, this is a righteous thing we're doing.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, when you're talking long term, you know better than I do. It's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's
Um, I think a very important part of what Vicky's sharing with us is um, no bullshit. Don't tell people it will be okay. They know that you're not being truthful
yep.
when you say that. And I guess your answer to that, Vicky, is connection and not being alone. Two more questions in the chat from two Ukrainians. Oksana
Thank
Bondarenko
you.
asks how to get back hope and confidence where you've been disappointed multiple times and lost faith. Has that ever happened to you, Vicky? Once a week, twice a week?
Indeed.
Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, boy. Yes. And you know what? I think it's so easy to get caught up in those disappointments because there's so many of them. And sometimes it seems to be so obvious what needs to be done, and there's so much bureaucratic tape, you can't get it done. So how do you get back hope and confidence in that? You know what? I, I take you back to what that hope is about, which is, how is it that the actions that I do might impact this situation or this person or this group of people or this family, this individual, in a positive way right now? And it's one of the things that we tell our paramedics. Our paramedics burn out. This is Olga in nursing could appreciate this. They burn out because every time somebody dies, they think they failed. And we have to help them remember, listen, you're looking at the end result, but you can't judge your success by the outcome. The way you have to judge your success is by the process, by what did you do? Did you bring your best self to that? Did you try to make things better? Did you bring your best skills and do the best that you could do in that minute? Then you did what you could do. And those are gifts that, even though when we look at the big picture and we say, this is so aggravating. I think that was one of the things for me, Dan, that was so touching about Prudence' book,
yes,
is
yes,
how does she keep going despite her, looking and going, what am I? I'm working for people who don't, they're not connected to the same thing that I'm connected to.
yeah.
And she had such an ability to bring it back down to, okay, but what about this one action that I can take right now,
Mhm.
and the difference that can make for
Mhm.
one person, for a group of people, or a community?
I guess part of what you're saying is it sounds like generosity, but it's actually a pragmatic thing. Think less about yourself and more about the other. Is it fair to say that? That when you say that, it sounds like altruism or generosity, but it's also tactically wise, I think. By the way, everybody, Vicky's referring to Prudence Bushnell's book. I will post a link to that. It's a remarkable thing. Prudence Bushnell was the U.S. ambassador in Kenya in August of 1998 when the embassy was bombed. She kept within her for 20 years her anger
Yep.
at the colleagues that she had in the State Department who ignored her dozens of times. And then she wrote a book. The part of the title is Betrayal, and she's talking about her own colleagues. I will put a link to that book. And again, as Vicky said at the beginning, take care of your people. The rest will take care of itself. Let's turn, and this may
And
be,
one more thing for Oksana.
yeah,
Surround yourself with other people that are doing the work and can help you when you're feeling like, what have we done here, right? And you're disappointed that there's someone else who can remind you, oh, listen, but what we're doing is making a difference.
Yeah.
So, have a community of those people, even by email. Send me an email. I'll send you one
Yeah.
back.
Yes, great. And by the way, if I forget, I think that Oksana has a follow-up, but I think Vicky, who I know to be a very generous person, if individuals want to reach her, I think she'd be willing to talk with you. If you send me a note, I'd be glad to forward it. Oksana has a follow-up before we get to Tetiana Mikolajchuk. Oksana?
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you, Professor. Thank you, Ms. Taylor. That's very insightful of you. But what should I do if even my colleagues, even my friends are all disappointed? Like, you've said, surrounded yourself, like, but I'm surrounded with the same
You're surrounded by.
disappointed people. Like, so like, yeah.
Yeah. What,
Then-
find new people? I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough
Well, you
one.
know what, Oksana, it may be that what you need is just kind of what Dan said. Like, is there somebody from outside of that circle? Because it's true. I mean, I work on a small team of people too, and we can get into that. And sometimes we have to bring somebody from the outside to help us
Mhm.
really get our roots back down and go, wait a minute, okay. Despite all of this, and all of the things that are disappointing and are making us crazy, what is the mission still pure? And are we still making a difference? And how do we give ourselves credit for that? So, finding somebody that could just have a conversation with you. If I can help you with that, I'm happy to. But just to have a conversation to help people get regrounded and it's almost like you lose your North Star. And somebody told me once, even when it's cloudy, the North Star is still out there, but sometimes you need somebody to remind you what direction to go.
Yeah. Maybe you need a conversation with Vicky Taylor. Okay, let's take,
Maybe
I
I
think
do. Thank you.
as our final question, Tetiana Mikolajchuk, who writes from Malta, of all places, Vicky.
Wow.
Thanks for this wonderful session. What strategies can be used when someone's reaction to assistance is anger or aggression instead of acceptance? I'm guessing you've had that hundreds of times.
Yeah, it's always surprising, right? And another time that I had to learn, Dan, don't take any of this but personally. It's not about you. You're the messenger. So and maybe you've done this, Tatiana. It's the only thing that I've learned to do, and that is to just stop and say, I'm interested to hear what you think would help. I
Mhm.
remember, and Olga can relate to this probably, walking into firehouses in New York City after the terrorist attack there and finding the most hostile, angry group of humans. Of course, their friends were dead and buried in the rubble. They had lost all their direction. And here I come in and they're like, uh-huh. And what exactly are you going to do? You got 10 minutes to give us your spiel. And, I just learned, I sat down and said, I really just want to hear from you.
Mhm.
What could I do? Is there anything that could be done like the girl at the hurricane. I just, is there a need you have that I could fill right now, or that I can work as hard as I can to get for you, that would make a difference to you? And a lot of times in the beginning, that is what has, I'm not saying that it's magic, but that is what has kind of thawed the situation out a little bit, is to really take a one down position and say, please help me understand what it is that, because we are trying to be helpful, but obviously it's not what you're looking for. What are you looking for? And maybe it's not something that you can provide, but at least you'll know, right?
That puts a gentle obligation. It sort of it not only empowers them, but it obliges them to become part of the process, right, Vicky? So you're really actually you're putting demands on them, and yet this is part of a positive process of involving them when they feel they have no agency. Is it?
Yes. And when people feel out of control, for a lot of us, anger is the easiest place to go, right? And anger typically hides more desperate emotions that we don't really want to feel or don't have time for. So we just get angry. And so, yeah, very often you can disarm anger by just saying, you know what, you're right. I don't have all the answers. And I thought that what we brought would be helpful, but apparently it's not. So, what would be helpful? And maybe you'll find out that it's not what you have to offer, and you try to connect them to some other resource.
So you think honesty might be useful? And Tatiana responds, thank you.
All right.
Empathy is the key. Vicky Taylor, this is a remarkable session. I will really remember this very gratefully. As everybody here, and you see the emojis
I
coming up
see
the
the
screen.
emojis. Oh, this has been,
Yeah.
I send my hearts to you.
Oh my gosh, look at this. Look at this. You've struck a nerve clearly. You know, we've been talking about macro situations and nations in conflict, but what you're talking about is something that everyone on this call um, needs to know better. Everyone, including me, has been called upon to be active in a situation of trauma, and we mean well, but sometimes the thing at the top of our mind is not what's most useful. So a little bit of thinking and practice and maintaining the principles that you've taught us, the 5 C's, um, will help us. It won't solve a problem, which is not what we do in this course, by the way. We manage crises, we don't solve them.
Right.
Um, Listen, Vicky, very grateful to you and to everybody on the call. And this is really memorable. The link to the recording of this session will be up on Google Classroom um, over this weekend. And we thank you. And whatever crisis is happening at this very moment that you're neglecting, it's our fault because we've taken you over. Abdullahi Ali says, thank you for the insightful session. He says it best. Thanks from all of us.
Oh, thank
Thank you.
you all, and thank you all for what you're doing. And my email is at the end of my slides, and don't hesitate to email me if I could help in any way. Thank you, Dan, for my
Have to.
invitation. I send my
Vicky,
love to all of you.
Vicky, you're a star, and so is everyone else. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.